Hey guys, I'm Matt, a developer from Ohio, and in this video I'll be walking you through the typography project. To complete this project, you'll need to be familiar with selectors, attributes, and style sheet linking. Let's get started. In this project, we'll use CSS rules to improve the readability and visual appeal of an existing web page. As the project name suggests, we'll focus on typography. We'll change various font attributes and also import several typefaces with a variety of methods. First, let's take a look at the header section of the page. We're going to change the font weight of this section. In style.css, we'll find the .header class selector and add the font weight attribute, and then we'll set it to bold. So we'll set font weight bold. Save your code, you should see that the page title and navigation items in the header are bolded. Even though we didn't select these items individually, they inherited the font weight from their parent element. Font weight can also be set to a number, which gives us more precise control than just bold or normal. We're going to use this on the December 20XX Morocco headings in the banner section. A higher number is more bold than a lower number, so let's set the banner H2 to 500 and the banner H1 to 900. So here at the H2, we'll set font weight to 500, and in the H1, we'll set font weight to 900. Often a good idea to make higher tier headings more bold, in addition to making them larger, higher up on the page, etc. These are all tools in the CSS toolbox that you can use to emphasize hierarchy. Below the banner section, we have the journal section. Take a look at how close the bottom of one line of text is to the top of the next line. In a text editor like Word or Docs, you would use a setting like single spacing or double spacing to control this. In CSS, this is called line height, and it works exactly the same way. A line height of 1 is single spacing, and a line height of 2 is double spacing. In Task 3's instruction, we're given 4 line heights to apply to 4 sections. We'll find the relevant selectors, add the line height attribute, and set it according to the instruction. So here, in Journal P, we'll set line height to 1.4. In First Letter, we'll set line height to 0.87. In Quote, we'll set line height to 1.2. And in Footer, we'll set line height to 1.5. This page is starting to look easier to read, but it could do with some style. Right now we're only using web-safe fonts, which are fonts that are pretty much guaranteed to be installed on a user's computer. You can use a service like CSS Font Stack to check for web-safe fonts. For example, our page uses Verdana, which is available to over 99% of users. But what if we want to use a typeface that isn't on this list? Or what if we don't want to chance that less than 1%? The only sure way is to import our own fonts. They'll get loaded on the page just like images or any other content, so all users will be able to see whichever font we want to use. There are a few ways to import fonts. One popular option is Google Fonts. We're going to use Google Fonts to import the 3 fonts described in Task 4's instruction. First is Abril Fatface. Let's type that in the search bar. If we click on the plus symbol for this font, it'll show up in our selection, which is accessible in this menu that says One Family Selected. Let's do the same for Work Sans and Merriweather. So we'll just type that in, Work Sans, edit, and then we'll type in Merriweather and add that as well. Now we need to go to the Customize tab in the selection menu. Here we can pick which font weights we want to use. These are the same numbers we used in Task 2 to set the font weight. For Merriweather, we need regular 400 and regular 400 italic. For Work Sans, we need regular 400, medium 500, and extra bold 800. Note that the load time has gone up to slow. It's important to only import the weights and styles that you intend to use. If you import every weight and style, the web page will take a really long time to load. Anyway, let's go back to the Embed tab and copy this link shown under Standard. We'll paste this link tag in the header of index.html. It should go before the style sheet link because the style sheet will use fonts from it. Now that we've imported some fonts, we can apply them to various elements with the font family attribute. Task 5's instruction tells us which elements to change. Here under banner H2, for example, we'll set font family to Work Sans. Keep in mind that this has to be in quotes like this, because it's a string and not some sort of other property or keyword. Banner H1, we're going to set font family to Abril Fatface. Journal, we will set also to work sans. And photo we'll set to Merriweather. Great, the page shows the imported fonts. One last thing we should do is add fallback fonts. It's a sort of just-in-case thing. If, for example, the Google Fonts service is down for a few hours, the browser will try to render the fallback font. We can add as many fallbacks as we want, but it's always a good idea to end with a generic keyword like serif, because these can't fail. Task 6 tells us which fallbacks to use, so let's go back and add them in. Here in Banner H2, we're going to add the fallback of Arial, and then the fallback of sans serif. What's going to happen here is if work sans fails, we'll fall back to Arial and then to sans serif. For Banner H1, we'll also add the fallback of sans serif, and what this means is that we're just going to be using a font that doesn't have any serifs. Serifs are just these little notches that come off of the letters. So this font Morocco does have serifs, but this font December 20XX doesn't have serifs, so it's a sans serif font. For journal, we'll fall back to a serifed font, and for photo, we'll also fall back to a serifed font. Our fonts are imported, used, and they even have fallbacks in case something goes wrong. Is there any other way we can improve? Well, a few tasks ago, I said that there's more than one way to import a font. Let's take another look at our linked fonts from Google. There's a URL here. This links to a style sheet provided to us by Google Fonts. If we copy and paste it, we can actually read that style sheet. This is what that style sheet looks like. Note that Google is using the @fontface rule to import each font. The rules that are labeled Latin are the ones we need to render Latin characters and numbers on the site. There's no reason we can't cut out the middleman and just use @fontface in our own style sheet, especially because we only need 3 of these rules. The page will even load a bit faster because we're using fewer imports. Let's copy and paste the relevant styles into our style sheet. So for example, we'll get this Abril Fatface style by copying this under Latin and pasting it into our CSS document. I've gone ahead and done this off camera since it's just copy and pasting. One thing to note is that you need to make sure to include the font weights in each rule. If you save your code, and if you did everything correctly, the page should look no different, but we know it's a bit better under the hood. You won't need to do this for most sites, as the optimization is pretty small with only a handful of fonts, but what we did was a great way to take a peek at what's happening behind the curtain. Understanding how to use FontFace in your own style sheet is important because it's good for more than just Google Fonts. We're going to use it here in Task 8 to import a font from a file. Let's start by defining a new FontFace rule. We do that with @font-face and then curly braces. This font needs a name. This will be what we write for the value of font family for the element that we want to have this font. It's easy to remember the attribute for naming a font face because it's also font family. We'll name it Croissant1. So font family, and then in quotation marks, Croissant1. If you click on the folder icon at the top left corner of the editor, you can find the font file in the fonts folder. We can use the source attribute to link to fonts/croissant1regular.ttf. We'll need to use the URL function here, just like we would when including a background image. So that'll be source set to URL, and then in parentheses the path, which is fonts/croissant1regular.ttf. And that's all that goes into this font face rule. It's a lot shorter than the others we've used. Just like any rule, you can be more or less specific when applying attributes. Finally, let's apply Croissant1 to the footer. We'll have Merriweather and Serif as fallbacks. So here, we'll set font family to Croissant1, fallback of Merriweather, and a second fallback of Serif. Project, we used CSS font styling attributes like font weight and line height to improve the readability of an existing web page. We also used Google Fonts to import new typefaces, explore different ways of accessing and optimizing those imports, and use the same techniques to import a font from a file. A lot goes into styling typography and web design, and rightfully so, as the majority of what you see on the web is text. I'm Matt for Codecademy. Happy coding!